5 seconds to go. Start. UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Please see how many we have today, and please also note how many of them actually got inscribed after 2014. So, I am making a point here that if we take pride in our heritage, if we appreciate our own past, if we are conscious of our identity, if we would like the world to know who we are as a people, then we will also deal with the rest of the world in a way in which they will understand and appreciate and value. So, my plea to all of you here is really these practices because you are all extraordinarily influential people. Each one of you moves in circles where there are other equally influential people with whom you interact. How do you get them to visit India? How do you get them to take more interest in things Indian? As I said, the gifts that you get, I saw the Prime Minister had this Wed in India post, I think yesterday, and I would say it even extends to building and sporting institutions that if you have today, we do a lot, we do a lot in India, but many of us, I am not saying we should not do things abroad, but at the end of the day, if you are in a particularly philanthropic mood, I would urge you please look at your own society. I am not asking you not to look at others. I am just asking you please look at your own society. So let me end in a way with having spoken about the nation, about the government, about societies. I would be remiss as a minister if I did not make a departmental pitch. I am heading a ministry, so they will ask me, you went to Fiki, so what did you say there? And I want to tell you really today how much the attitude of embassies and the foreign ministry and actually honestly all of government has changed. So for us today, sporting exports working to enhance your market access is actually our number one goal. Number two is actually when you go abroad. Many of you would know the lay of land but may not know it so well. So, how can we, the embassies? The doors of the embassies are there, and I can tell you, and I think you know this well, that those have become wider and wider open. That today ambassadors and commercial officers proactively reach out to business saying, we would be very happy if you can come here, tell us what we can connect you up. So, how do we support your operations abroad? How do we ensure that you actually are more successful? The third, which is our expectation of the business community of India, which is this new opportunity that has arisen about global supply chains which are in the making. That post COVID, with all the frictions, the geopolitical frictions that are going on, there is today actually a very interesting set of different supply chains coming up in areas like semiconductor, for example, or even in renewables and critical emerging technologies in the digital world, in the telecom world. So, how do we actually today get into that global supply chain? Because until we are part of that global supply chain, there is a threshold to how much we can grow. So, again, to be on the journey towards Viksit Bharat, we need to be on a global supply chain. The fourth pertains to the procurement of resources. Every time I look at our trade figures, for me, it is striking how much of an importer of natural resources we are. and therefore why it is important to actually cultivate those countries and those relationships which would give us guaranteed access to natural resources because our businesses will need that. The fifth is in facilitating mobility. Facilitating mobility because your businesses will require mobility abroad. You will go abroad more and more. You will need people to support your operations because that is today the nature of the evolving business. But there is also a global because of shifting demographics. There is a global demand for talent, for skills. So, from my first 30 years in diplomacy, we used to pursue countries saying, please ease up on your visas and find ways of letting your nationals in. Today, I actually see the tables turn. That, particularly in Europe to some extent, I have seen it in Japan, in Korea, in Australia, that there is actually a demand for Indian skills and Indian talent. And our challenge is how to create a regime so that you have not just mobility but non discriminatory mobility, that our people there are given their full rights, they are not underpaid or underbenefited in some manner. The sixth, which is for us a challenge both at home and abroad, is really the protection from unfair competition. That how do we, how do we get the data, how do we build the understanding, how do we make sure that feeds into policies, how then do we build our defenses, and how do we take action against unfair competition. Because for too long this country has put up with unfair competition in the name of there is a globalization era, ऐसे ही होता है, we have to live it, we do not have to live it. If competition is unfair, we must have the ability to call it out. And finally, how do we help with the globalization of India? Because the world is globalizing, history is on our side. Every measurable index is working in our favor. In that 25 years, that 25 years is not just about growing in India as a Viksit Bharat, it is actually also growing in the world as a Viksit Bharat. So, having said that, let me conclude on a motivational note. I would say perhaps about 15 years ago, we used to be called the back office of the world. Today, we are called the pharmacy of the world. We are called the designer of the world. We are called the researcher of the world. We are called the producer of the world. We are called the digital, in a sense, the digital pioneer, if you would. When we speak about our achievements, it is something real, contemporary, impactful for the rest of the world. I take the conversation on subjects like vaccine, the medicines we have provided, the 5G stack that we are rolling out, the UPI payments which dwarf every other competitive source out there, the Tejas that the Prime Minister has just flown in. We strive for food security, for energy security. These are long standing problems, but of which we need to find better and better solutions. But what I can say is, as we move into the next 25 years, whether it is a challenge like EV or a challenge like AI, this country needs to pull up its socks, get ready. I think this decade has laid the foundation for it. The Prime Minister once, he has a turn of phrase. So he said it is both about tradition and technology. How do we get it both together? I think in a way for us today, it is also both about being more nationalist and being internationalist. How do we again find the balance? How do we reconcile both together? And what I can say is that it is only through continuous progress today that we can really lay the basis for greatness tomorrow. I am completely convinced that we can all do that, but we can do that only when there is a full and absolutely charged up partnership with all of you. So, once again, I want to say it has been a real pleasure sharing my thoughts with you today, and I wish you all the best to you, sir, as you hand over charge, and to Dr. Anish Shah as he takes over. Thank you very much. Stop.